I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we continue with the Psychick Bible, the apocryphal scriptures of Genesis P-Orridge, and the third mind of the Temple of Psychic Youth. Section 126, Part C of Addenda to the second edition of the Psychick Bible. Examples of internal disagreement in TOPY. Date: June 13th, 1994, from Genesis P-Orridge to Lars of Mars, subject, as it is. I'm sorry not to get back to you sooner, but have, as you can imagine, had my time pretty full. Like everyone, just surviving, getting the monthly rent money together is still a real struggle. Suspect from outside that might seem hard to believe, but would estimate 50% at least of PTV products and TG out in shops are bootlegs or pirated. Was just in Vinyl Fetish in LA, and they had 6 PTV t-shirts that were selling, all unofficial. Don't tell you this to elicit sympathy, but you can imagine that sometimes it gets really frustrating. And which has happened several times this last year, we've only had food for the kids because friends have brought us groceries. Resentment can build up. Have never had the urge to be rich, self-fulfilling prophecy probably, but would like what feel is just percentage of the money generated via my ideas in music, etc. Having said that, hell, at least have managed to survive, have fabulous adventures, keep our children safe, and be blessed with really loyal and supportive friends. It's the life always wanted, and it's still fun, intense, depressing, and surprising more than enough. Was sad at first to receive your original letter. You don't feel it was really terribly fair. You don't know how you are feeling right now. Was certainly pleased to receive your postcard. Even though it may not matter to you, would like to clarify a few points for the record and to honor your initial anger, which was at least sincere, brave, and engaging. You don't know if writing to you as a friend, as you would like to any individual, will count as sickening sweet bullshit, but like it or not, this is actually me speaking, simply typing down my thoughts as they come, as near to spontaneously as can. Don't believe screwed over Headbanger. Indeed, we've spoken amicably several times since got to the USA, and even discussed becoming involved in the process of TOPY again. Headbanger, or Tom as have always called him, also donated the uncollated copies of Esoterrorist to me, and when these are sold, will be sending him an agreed amount in good faith. He delivered the school bus to me via Nobody, the other original co-founder of TOPYUS. Nobody stayed and helped out for several months as a gift, to ease the logistics of Paula choosing to leave to be with Andy. Work from home, so having the children here a lot, and wanting to give a stable and consistent base for them to adjust within, was and still is my priority over everything else. I'm sure it's Paula's too. After 15 years in the passion and intensity our lives were lit with, have no regrets and no bitterness. Paula is still a remarkable, beautiful woman, the mother of our 2 angels, Caress and Jeunesse, and feel confident we can remain friends and develop a new kind of special relationship. This change ought to be used as an opportunity to show a way to do things differently to society's imprints, as far as can see in any way. However, do really feel that our relationship should be respected as our private affair and not confused with other projects that are to differing degrees matters of interest to other people. For the record, am not a wanted felon in England. Have never been charged with anything. There are no warrants of any kind issued. A full report has been handed to the Crown Prosecution Services for their assessment. This report has both my name on it and Paula's. Ironically, the only videos that Ciard are deeply concerned about is one called Psychoporn that was made solely by Sleazy, and one called Polar Vision, which is also solely made by Sleazy. Had been advised by Scotland Yard that if gave them a statement to the effect they would immediately return my property and guarantee we would be cut out of the loop. We were in Kathmandu when we heard of the police raid. We had been in the Far East for 3 months or so. We were advised, even by the Tibetans, who we were there helping, amongst other things, not to return. In England, certainly up until the recent report by the government saying satanic abuse never existed, one anonymous phone call, even from a person with a grudge or angry for whatever reason, meant your children were automatically taken into care, often for 2 years. No evidence was needed of any kind. The accusation was considered enough. Our children were our first priority then and now. In fact, in Thailand a few weeks later, E did offer to return to England, leaving Paula and the children safe in Thailand, but Paula did not feel it would achieve anything useful, so E stayed with my family. E had been raided before by the police over the years. E was aware you might be a target culturally. It's part of the job. E did not realize that the police and others would specifically choose to attack us at that time. E do not regret my beliefs, nor do E regret being a spokesperson for them and on behalf of others. Paula and E had already talked of moving to Northern California. In fact, at the TOPY-US Access Point meeting in San Francisco in 1990, we had asked individuals to look out for properties and send us details, which they had. We intended to sell our house in Brighton and buy land here to donate to TOPY as the first community tribal station. We lost our house, though, the raid, but it was repossessed. We let many TOPY and other active individuals live there, and it continued to be a source of ideas and events for over a year. The Psychic cross was consciously designed on graph paper by me, based on the cross of Zyklon B gas canisters, but also to include the Process Church Unity cross, unused by them as it happens, and to have such a sense of generic familiarity that it would be functional on the many levels intended for the maximum number of individuals, a nonverbal symbol, and links in proportions of 2 and 3. Most of the income for TOPY in the early years was generated by PTV, who often donated all their royalties for a way of life we all believe in. We wanted to maintain a level of ability to ensure that it was not utilized in ways that did not clearly represent the TOPY way. In this end, to primarily maintain damage control of irresponsibility, which does go on sometimes for whatever reasons, but also to try and maximize the TOPY income and integrity. E did choose to register the Psychic Cross as an international trademark with reciprocal rights in the USA. In terms of the name, the Temple of Psychic Youth, you don't think anyone should deny its origin nor the basic story of its unfolding. At the last TOPY global meeting in the UK, we expressed concerns, myself and Paul, that whether it was fair or not, or seemed reasonable or justified, the authorities did not concern themselves with the niceties of internal TOPY structures or delegation of responsibilities, etc. In other words, if and when any shit hit the fan, it would be me and Paula who would be targeted and most at risk. We asked people to be aware that this would continue for some years, as we had been high-profile activists and as an attack would be a cultural strategy primarily, we would be the appropriate media food. Some people felt this was egocentric and paranoid of us, the same people whose behavior was jeopardizing TOPY by drawing heat. Needless to say, they were not correct in their reading of the potential dangers, and we were the figureheads that were attacked. When we arrived in the U.S., Paula felt that exactly the same problems could arise if the same action group targeted us here. The finance for the documentary in England was from the USA. She did not want our children to be emotionally raped or hounded or taken into care here after saving them from the UK authorities. As in the media mind and the police mind, the Psychic Cross is associated, rightly or wrongly, with PTV, and even us as individuals, as it is our trademark also, then there seems a real risk of the same scenario occurring. It was Paula who insisted that he write to TOPNYNA, requesting the cessation of use of the name and cross, to try and make it absolutely clear that they were a separate autonomous entity and that we would not be held accountable for any of the individual's present or future actions. It also seemed sensible for TOPYNA, as the reverse could also be true. Any stupid actions by us would not reflect on all of you. I am not apportioning blame here. E chose of my own free will to write the letter Paula asked me to. It seemed to me the writing of it was in fact presented as a test of my love of her and 3 children, and the depth of my commitment to them all. E guess E never could resist a challenge. Having said that, E have no wish to get rid of TOPY. E do believe that the title is an anachronism. The way of life, the way of magic, the individuals involved, what they each bring to TOPY, what the result of their common aims achieves, the sum total of all involved is the continuing use of a name conceived and proselytized, should be inessential to the integrity of the group. Particularly, if TOPY has changed and evolved, wants to distance itself from myself, even potentially despise and ridicule myself, you would think it would be inevitable to change the name for a new era, direction, and system. You can only think of one good reason to continue using the TOPY first ratio title. You certainly would feel uncomfortable with the dichotomy of antipathy towards me and utilizing of my concepts, etc. It is true that we had a brief period of being tense with Mark at Amoeba, But that was a long time ago, and interestingly enough, a fifth ratio TOPI individual lives and works there now. The new owner, Alan, is an ally, is planning to give me clothes next week, and Mark and Tracy are still good, loving friends. You think of Amoeba as one of my safe and sacred spaces, where I am accepted as a flawed but sincere individual, for which I am glad. You think that the old cliche, real friends are people you can disagree and argue with and remain friends, is pretty close to the frequency of truth. He studied the process since 1968 and I'm very aware of the way it splintered. As you probably know, the running title for the dynamics of the last 23 months has been the Splinter Test, and E have learned and observed all he could. E know that you sent me a friendly and gladly received postcard since your initial letter, but E do feel that E wanted to honor you, and your feelings of outrage as a matter of personal principle. E hope you will read and accept this letter, regardless of what you think of its contents, in the spirit it was written, which E hope is the spirit of the TOPI, and certainly was intended to be part of the foundation of TOPY. So be it. Date, December 9th, 1994. From Genesis P-Orridge to Lars of Mars. Subject, as it is. How incredibly attuned you are, or what signals you generate. E had a restless night last night, and during that time E found myself thinking of you and making a Dreamwalker note to write to you again. Lo and behold, there's a package from you in the box this morning. Excellent, and it cheered my heart. Thank you. We've put you on the new mailing list, and here is a package for you. E added a couple of things. The patches are given as a gift of trust, not for sale, to allies and friends only. The Occulture is for your archive, and E explains in the editorial what we feared would happen into TOPY, which E since it did. The changed priorities cards were sent out on New Year's 1991, i.e. 23rd of January, to TOPI, to suggest a complete break and nomadic push away from dogma and or a museum of magic. Magic is only one language for description of manifestation and invocation, and even then a very particular area of experience. The world, life, and the universe or omniverses are much bigger than that. We had hoped to maintain flux, obsession, and change for its own sake, not stasis. Oh well, those who are habituated and condemned to repeat it. Thank you for those lucky numbers, but forgive my genuine ignorance, but who is Dan? IT would help me strategize to know. You have to admit, E have occasionally tried to stir these TOPY individuals up, E felt, to do their own advantage. But it seems a hopeless case. They seem incapable of letting go. E hear from the UK that Malchik is bowing to the inevitable and closing TOPY. There's no need for counting that specific and limiting. We all will need to expand and develop wider-reaching cultural subversions, and should feel, all of us, we will get support and understanding from our kind without any card-carrying, literal or behavioral. Tom Coyote in Denver has been in touch regularly and hopes to visit soon. He plans to write an official story of the 10 years of TOPY, also to coordinate his skills in terms of transmedia and any action groups under its potential umbrella. E have always felt you had strength and honesty by how we met, both on stage and in your first letter, quite correctly demanding some explanation. More vitally, you actually listened objectively. Thank you for that. E-Hope in 95 to set up some events in San Diego with some people from Manchester who have access to 2 houseboats. One looks like a castle. You might know these boats. If we do it, we need to push the idea of an event further. Perhaps you could help? The divorce with Paulo awaits only her agreeing to sign annulment papers. You have to be honest and say, now that you have adjusted, I am happy for the change. We can all begin again, hopefully, designing our network together to maximize the achievement of our true desires and to slowly build an alternative, extended tribal way on life. So be it. And there is a section break. TOPI or not TOPY? The Temple of Psychic Youth was conceived as a platform to proselytize in a cultural perception of life in 1978 by Brother Genesis. He intended it to become a vehicle for the demystified dissemination of specific sexual magic and ritualized neurological techniques and skills, a means of transporting the individual into a deep sense of self-examination and clarity of intent, a dedicated post-nuclear, mutually acknowledged and supported tribal focus of will, a portal for the exploration from within specific Western post-Judeo-Christian societies traveling towards an anarchic, visionary, unified, compassionate, and highly disciplined global network, a commentary upon popular culture, the museum of traditional Western magic, and an entertaining and analytical expression of the resulting interactions, collisions, speculations, and results. And finally, in a sense, as an objective to always travel further, the gradual development of a self-created myth, extended family, and fully integrated way of life, devotion, ceremony, and ritual that, by example, would produce a viable modern equivalent to the Asian attitudes and systems that make appraisal or evaluation of ridiculous commentary upon what it is. The TOPY project was initiated by Genesis P-Orridge in 1981 and was terminated by his decision in 1991. This had always been the specific intent and agenda. Unfortunately, there are some post-TOPY individuals who cannot grasp the essential nature of change, or the essence of being committedly anti-dogmatic, by which was meant fundamentalism of any type whatsoever, including TOPY, Western ceremonial magic, vegetarianism, sexual preferences, etc., as well as the more obvious right-wing political greed, imprinted control, or Judeo-Christian archetypes. So much so that they cling to the TOPY construct and pretend it still has relevance and purpose. It was never graced with. They treat Brother Genesis' Grey Book as if it were holy. They made TOPY into a church. Ugh, something it was always designed to ridicule and destroy. They parrot the actions and texts, they adjust the details, like so many demented librarians, whilst pompously proclaiming independence and separateness. They talk of members, yet Brother Genesis was always very clear that there were never to be any. You were simply active or you were not. You were connected or you chose to be disconnected. The current of the tribe of recognition, those who knew they had enough in common to share deep experiences outside the inherited values of society, was not named TOPY by Brother Genesis without a great deal of forethought. He wrote, "These letters do not stand for the series of 4 words as TOPY does. Rather, they are an integrated whole. TOPY is one unified word. A place where each unique individual stands, their sexuality integrated into one upward rising flow we name Pandrogeny towards a total gender." So TOPY is the archetypal and central consciousness. What Jason and Burroughs would call the third mind, others the collective unconscious, in the process the chaos sphere. TOPY, however, is the absolute brain itself outside human beings, that which was once called magic. TOPY will be earthbound and finite throughout its brief existence and necessity. TOPY is infinite and timeless, being a quantum state and neither a life form nor a disposable and limited strategy. That is why when we overlay the letters of TOPY and TOPY, symbolizing integration of all levels, we transmit the rune of protection, but we also receive a symbol of completion, where both sexuality and individuality meet to become a singularity. The periods are intended as signals that TOPY is only designed to be a period of preparation and cleansing to engender discipline and fertility for the process to seed. Regardless of any pretensions or statements to the contrary by those whose self-esteem requires an uncomprehending parasitism that clings desperately to the inabandoned moment, TOPY was terminated in 1991 for the best of reasons. TOPY remains a way of life that sustains and glorifies the resurgence of the process that will always be the source. Father Malachi. And there's a section break. Know this, the frequency of truth. Please be informed, once and for all ways. Genesis P-Orridge, Psychick TV, Temple Press Transmedia, and any and all former stations and or access points of the network previously known as TOPY or the Temple of Psychic Youth have absolutely no connection whatsoever with any groups or organizations purporting to represent or actually be that network. The Temple of Psychic Youth was voluntarily terminated by its source with extreme prejudice on September 3, 1991, in accordance with their original intent. Any person or persons claiming membership of, or even more absurdly control over anything they erroneously call TOPY since the date, is clearly either a fool or a charlatan. Any claims that they might make are entirely bogus. Do not support them in their delusions. TOPY is all of you and has no membership. It is both the spirit and intention. It is also implicitly the key to the next manifestation and action. The Temple of Psychic Youth never had anything you didn't have already. It was a temporary catalyst, a preparatory demystifier and strategic propagandist. The nursery. The process was the product. However, let it be perfectly clear, the Transmedia Foundation has the only legitimate and complete archive of TOPY and is the only existing contemporary organization officially and legally authorized to make these materials directly available to the public through its network as unique documentation of a seminal initial but finite ahistorical period in the ongoing TOP-I manifestation. If you have any interest in either obtaining materials and publications from the only official TOPY archive at the Transmedia Foundation or information on the present TOP-I network, its allies in the future, you should contact them direct. Date, September 15th, 1993. From Genesis P-Orridge. 2. Dear TOPY Nada, subject without prejudice. I am writing in regards to your continued use of the name the Temple of Psychic Youth and the three-tiered Psychic Cross without my having given due documented consent or knowledge. As you probably know, both the name and the logo are my internationally registered trademarks and indoor intellectual copyrights, which I have used continually for well over a decade. They also represent symbols that are closely associated with me in the public's mind on a global scale, artistically, commercially, and personally. The unauthorized use of these trademarks by your group is problematic for me in a legal sense, since it challenges my right to protect unauthorized use of my own intellectual property and personal trademark. Indeed, it would make a mockery of the intention of international laws and reciprocities on such matters if the expensive process of regeneration was made null and void simply by the act of any individual or group assimilating and exploiting it whenever the mood or advantage took them. Also, since I have no control over your group, which is currently exploiting and using this property, I cannot reasonably be assured of the artistic quality of acts or other behaviors associated with these trademarks as a result of your pirate exploitation of same. Nor can I protect myself from possible future litigation or even police investigation should any of your group behave illegally or irresponsibly during any of your activities, or any inspired by or associated with your group. In short, your group's unauthorized use of these trademarks is a legal and personal hassle we would rather do without. It is indeed a threat to my freedoms, my children's well-being, and my own present and future cultural projects. The primary reason my family chose to leave the UK was triggered by the irresponsible and misguided activities of other individuals masquerading as TOPY in a bogus and damaging manner. Being the intellectual property owner of both the name Temple of Psychic Youth, the trademark of the Psychic Cross, and the Grey Book, and indeed the core original tenets and language of TOPY, whether it seems fair or just, it is me and my children that are suffering directly, psychologically, financially, and can still be held responsible by the authorities for anything done, published, portrayed, or even your bogus and unauthorized, uncharted individuals or groups utilizing consistently with a view to deliberately mislead the public, my own personal works, trademarks, and concepts without my prior written consent and or knowledge. Any doubts on that as to the albeit unfair responsibility that I contend with are clearly contradicted by the events in the UK in 1991. By the same token, we certainly understand how you might want to associate yourself with what was TOPY and my Psychic Cross. These are powerful symbols, and I appreciate that your group feels a resonance with my dedicated works and my successful communication of some of the ideas they contain, whilst TOPY continue to function under the guidance of myself and a few close friends. It is because of this resonance that we felt we should write to you personally to straighten this matter out first, rather than sending a letter from some lawyer. While we simply really can't allow your group to continue using our trademarks or our intellectual property, i.e. the name Temple of Psychic Youth, we also have absolutely no interest in trying to shut you down or causing any more interruption than is necessary. We desire that we should have had all along, an absolute clear lack of connection between us, an end to the deliberate impression you gave that you are in some way endorsed by myself. This is quite unacceptable as well as illegal. We would rather instead that we might come to a friendly agreement in which your group would voluntarily agree to find a different name and symbol for itself and continue with its independent and separate activities, whatever those may be, without thereby causing further friction, disagreements, infringement of my trademarks and copyrights, or the possible further jeopardizing of my family's security by who knows what actions by a group of people we really don't know. We'd even be happy to help you think of alternative names that wouldn't violate our copyrights, so you seem to have a penchant for the fruits of my intellect. Another matter. I also heard that you're selling copies of the Grey Book, or at least an edited version of the Grey Book. This infringement will really also have to cease for the same reasons that I can't allow unauthorized use of my intellectual property and copyrights, or your intrusion into the bona fide publication of my books. Please understand that I make my living and feed my family on the money I make as a writer, musician, lecturer, performer, producer, and fine artist. When somebody sells or pirates my works without receiving prior written consent from me, or directly negotiating appropriate terms with me first, and or paying a license fee, this means that someone is ripping me off, and quite literally taking food from my children's mouths and threatening them with homelessness. And if I don't take the steps to prevent the unauthorized use of my work, then the honest people who do pay license and other fees are getting ripped off by the likes of you too. Believe me, it's nothing personal, but I absolutely can't allow this to continue. I must put the best interests, the safety, the security, and the long-term needs of my children, and finally, myself, first at the stage of my life, which I certainly hope, as obvious admirers of my life and works as evidenced by your continued exploitation of them, you'll appreciate and support. I hope that you'll see this letter as a reasonably friendly personal request under the circumstances, that you immediately cease and desist from any and all use of my properties without your having a proper license or agreement with me. I'm pleased that your group exists, as I believe in personal exploration and am flattered by the influence of my own previous projects. I wish you all the best of luck, but I can't allow this present illegal infringement situation to continue. If you'd like some time to consider a new name, or if there's anything is easier I can do to make this transition, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, you may write back to me saying that you've received this letter and that by such and such date you'll cease and desist using the name, the Temple of Psychic Youth, and the Psychic Cross, and that you'll immediately cease distributing copies of the Gray Book or any and all other written, graphic, audio, or other works whose copyrights are owned by me. The specific date for the end of this situation would be most valuable. If you have any questions regarding this letter, please feel free to write to me as soon as possible. I would appreciate it if you also informed any still functioning access points of the need for them to also cease and desist all use of both the Temple of Psychic Youth, and any and all obvious derivatives of the same, and all use of the Psychic Cross logo in any and all forms. I should appreciate an up-to-date list of all such access points in order that I might politely inform each of them personally of this unfortunate situation that has arisen through your actions. I should also request that any and all sales of any merchandise, writing, printed matter, propaganda, or any other medium that in any way associates your activities with either my personal registered trademark, the Psychic Cross, my intellectual copyright name, the Temple of Psychic Youth, Psychic TV, or myself, or my family, end forthwith and in perpetuity, as it is. Date, April 12th, 1995. From Christopher Robin to Genesis P-Orridge, subject as it is. I have just a couple of things to say. I've pulled my association with the still existing TOPYNA. The behavior of several TOPY people regarding your situation has become intolerable to me. I can no longer be an ally to such childish and your right threatening behavior. Making fellow human beings feel threatened in their own environment, afraid to walk down the street for fear of being ridiculed, mocked, and what have you, is not something I condone. It is most certainly not a very TOPY-like way. I'm telling you this not to get your approval, not to get a pat on the back, but simply to let you know that you are correct in your position against TOPYNA on that level. Now the second part. Even though I feel you're right and have every right to know, I simply can't give you the address to the new station. I thought long and hard about this. The only way I received the address was to sigilizers only. I cannot betray that trust. I could easily give the address to you knowing it's justifiable. I am not in the position to pass judgment nor aid in doing so. My decision, right or wrong, is my personal decision. It shouldn't have any other consequences beyond that. If you don't, via another source, have the address by this time, it will be available shortly, I'm sure. Without making itself known to the public, the group will only further its own stagnation. As of last week, there was news of individuals from Great Britain sending in sigils and wanting Eden numbers. I've tried to reason with the current station coordinator. My advice to you, take legal action. It's sloppy and costly as well, but I see no alternative. If you can prove that the Psychic Cross is yours and the name TOPY is yours, and I think you can, then you can legally stop anyone from using it. According to the legal theories I've studied, things do not have to be legally registered as a copyrighted item to be copyrighted. All TOPYNA has are a lot of publications, all old, which can be traced back to you. There's nothing that TOPYNA has that could stand up in a court against you. Perhaps the fact that it's a registered church in the state of California could be a problem. I don't know. The new station is not in California, though, so it couldn't be protected under the same registered church status, could it? At any rate, these people will not listen to reason nor threats. Swift legal action would be the fastest way to resolve this. I do apologize on behalf of the few sensible people still involved. Many of them are quite in the dark, I'm afraid. From Genesis P-Orridge to Christopher Robin, subject RE as it is. As you probably know, E was in a fire and accident in L.A. E am recovering, but my arm is smashed in 8 places, ribs broken, and complications. So just a quick note to say thank you. E accept and honor your sense of fairness. E will get back to you when you feel a little better. Date, September 23rd, 1995, from Genesis P-Orridge to Christopher Robin, subject RE, so it seems. As it is, you can write directly to me, that way E will to ensure you all broadsheets. Today is the 23rd, the equinox, the official new beginning of a process eon. Each period begins in September. cum, TG, PTV, TOPY, TOPI, and now transmediation. I am very happy to be communicating and sharing with you. It's a sad thing the illusion come people chose to carry of their radicalism or whatever. But each has their own limit, I guess. Most people chose to stop growing, just as lots stop writing poetry after their teens. We must not judge, nor hold attachment to dreams. Dreamless sleep we are unhappy with, dreams we like. So happy special day. Now, the renewed war begins on hypocrisy, culture, stagnation, apathy, and sublimation of desire. Usual stuff, but isn't it incredible how few people are really serious about committing their entire life to flux, change, and disintegration? So be it. Date, February 5th, 1995, from Christopher Robin to Genesis P-Orridge. Subject, RE full of? I'm rather amazed that you took the time to respond in such detail to my short bursts of non-intellect. I'm replying to your response, including your original message. It makes for a long message, and for that I apologize. However, it is best for me to respond to your statements and questions. What follows is my perspective from my introduction to TOPY to the message RE full of shit. I hope you will read it and understand my position with an unbiased mind. Date, February 3rd, 1995. From Genesis P-Orridge to TOPYNADA. Subject, as it is. Well, you certainly find the level of intellectual prowess from TOPYNADA to be lacking. And you wonder why you feel so emotional about something that is strictly obvious, which is that whatever you might wish to imagine, you do have the right to my own intellectual property. And perhaps if anyone could see something special coming out of the NADA group apart from the codes and bylaws that totally contradict, emasculate, and deny what TOPY was begun for, maybe we wouldn't wish to protect the positive contribution that is originally offered. TOPYNADA. Point well taken. I have no part nor voice in making TOPYNA a state-recognized religion in California. This was done, as we were told, to protect TOPYNA and its files from the government. This was a direct result of your home in London being raided. It was meant to be a safeguard. At the time, I thought that it was a contradictory thing to do. However, it was the necessary tool to keep our files safe from such a raid as you suffered, then I was for it. The bylaws were all part of it. Genesis. Have you stopped to wonder how sad it is that you are all getting bitter over this angry, verbally violent, even sending death threats to me, simply because E asked politely at the beginning for you to simply change the name and not use the cross anymore? Primarily, originally, to protect our children from further prosecution for my ideals which you have not upheld or understood. TOPYNADA. Of course it is sad. How else should we react? Anyone who has made a death threat to you is simply not thinking clearly. I wouldn't let it worry you. Yes, it is offensive. However, we're all pretty passive. Your life is in no danger from any sigilizer or ally of TOPYNA. That you can be sure of. The reason for my rage is simple, and I think I speak for those involved with TOPYNA as well. I was given a process in which I could free myself from my Christian programming that had been ingrained in my mind since early childhood. A method of realizing and attaining what I wanted in life. Immediate or long-term. I was given a group of like-minded individuals to correspond with, connect with, and work with. I was given a symbol to focus my energy on, to draw on anything and everything, and to represent who I was and who I was involved with. I was given a number, an individual name as an active sigilizer with this like-minded group. Together we were given a name. Your first letter to TOPY, without prejudice, was the bomb that stirred our anger. The very man who taught us how to free ourselves via music, video, and written word, who was responsible for connecting us with a wonderful group and magical symbol to represent our beliefs, suddenly came and said, I'm taking it all back. You can't use the name of the cross anymore. The gray book is mine as well. Did you think we could just thank you for all the fun ride and go back to our normal lives? I can see and completely understand you wanting to protect your children and yourself. I wouldn't want 100 different people using my name as artists. Who knows what kind of crap someone would put out? Who knows what someone would do illegally and claim to be me? Your letter accused TOPNY of ripping you off and taking food from the mouths of your children. Obviously, you never visited a station or AP here in the States. They are usually run on stamps, sent in with sigils, and extra money from the pockets of coordinators. TOPYNA has never made it financially rewarding. No one has made any money that should be yours. Genesis. You can rage and scream all you want, but take out my ideas, words, text, and what you have. TOPYNA. ADA. We have the ideas and processes, the foundation of TOPY. We never were interested in who wrote that. How would you feel if Austin Osman Spare came back from the grave and told you can't use sigil magic anymore? It was my idea. How about if Tristan Zarza came back from the grave to tell Bill Burroughs that he was suing him for stealing his idea of a cut-up? Genesis. But more importantly, would you sacrifice your children for your colleagues if the only evidence you had of their character was that they insulted and threatened you? TOPYNADA. I'm lost on this one. Has TOPYNA or TOPY Soul's only output been that of insults and threats? Hardly. Genesis. He never asked you to believe in me. TOPYNADA. No, you didn't. It just came with the territory. I watched your video material, listened to your music, read your words. I dare you to put yourself in any place and ask and listen to at Stockholm. How was I not to believe in you? You were to me a friend that I simply hadn't met yet. Genesis. It was never a part of the project. TOPYNADA. Nor was terminating it after 10 years, as you claim, unless you just failed to tell everyone but a chosen few. Genesis. I'm glad you have stopped, though sorry you misunderstood so much of what he said. TOPYNADA. Well, I guess a man of your stature doesn't need to be believed in by the likes of me and my friends. I never misunderstood you, Jen. Everything you said was crystal clear in my mind. That's the only reality I know and understand, that of my own. Genesis. I am writing because you care about communicating, about the ideas, about living a life of change and challenge, about the integrity of what TOPY, amongst others things, was. TOPYNADA. How can you speak of change when what you are doing is taking old TOPY text and giving them a new name and new symbol, borrowed from the Process Church of the Final Judgment? This is change? This is moving on? Genesis. You see and hear no evidence of comprehension by anyone, just a group of people protecting what they did not build and wanting status rather than freedom. TOPYNADA. Wrong. True, we may not understand your true motives, but we did build TOPYNA in the current North American network. We have all the freedom we need as a group. The status was just what we had been known as. Genesis. He really don't want you angry. He'd like to hope you at least once understood. Try and step back from feeling your holy cow is threatened. TOPYNADA. I probably have far more understanding than anyone else you're likely to talk about TOPY excluding Havoc. My anger is quelled. I have no malice towards you. Genesis. Isn't it sad that he have to initiate or try to trigger a real TOPY self-examination of the awful bureaucracy and conservative misstatement that it seems to be? TOPYNADA. Yes, I fully agree. I was not happy with the church status either, but as I mentioned previously, it was done to protect TOPYNA from what happened to you. Genesis. Why are you all so obsessed with continuing to use my work whilst insulting me and degrading the intention of what it began? TOPYNADA. Your work, stands by itself. It's timeless and should have no author. Again, I have never degraded TOPY. I held it in the highest esteem. Genesis. Ye realize ye have set myself up for another stream of easy put-downs and bending on my phrases, but ye am not doing this, writing to protect myself. TOPYNADA. No more put-downs. I respect your will, even if it is in opposition to mine. Genesis. You don't know if we've ever met. If we have, tell me more. TOPYNADA. Nope, we have never met. Without reason or prior knowledge of PTV or TOPY. I attend your show here in Tempe, Arizona during the Infinite Beat Tour. I spent the entire show watching my friend Melissa dance on the stage. At that time, I didn't know her. I remember you walking off to the right of the stage and singing, staring dead straight into my eyes, no more than 12 inches from my face. I went home thinking I needed to purchase some of your music. The rest is history. Genesis. Write constructively. Tell me why you need to exploit my ideas and work while simultaneously denying and attacking me. TOPYNADA. No one involved with TOPYNA has ever exploited you. The attacks were purely reactionary. Genesis. I find it very puzzling. TOPYNADA. I hope the puzzle has been a challenging one. Genesis. I am, by the way, a brother, but of my own chosen family, which to date you are correct you are not a part of, though, as we used to say in TOPY, the door is always open, an old TOPI proverb. TOPYNADA. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate the thought. However, what's to keep you from pulling the rug out from underneath the process in 10 years? Once is enough for me. Genesis. I sincerely wish you luck in all you do and bear no malice towards you. TOPYNADA. Nor do I wish any ills. Thanks for taking the time to reply. I never would have expected it. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. The rhinos of wrath are whiter than the horses of destruction. Date, February 2nd, 1995. From Michael E. Payne to Genesis P-Orridge. Subject, copyright and trademark infringement. Genesis. I did receive your email of January 11th, 95. Apart from the denial implicit in your response in terms of its content, I really feel that it is entirely inappropriate for you to respond ad hoc via this medium to a legal matter of such seriousness. TOPYNADA. By broadcasting to the whole list, you invite my response. You have strayed into one of my operational spaces. I can't speak for the others. Being the true gentleman that you are, I would appreciate a response. What happened back in 91? Didn't you become a nomad and dissociate from the temple? That is what I perceive. The interview in Seconds magazine claims that the temple project ended in 1991. I can see how your involvement ended, but due to the present existence of everyone on this list and not on this list, how can the statement be justified? Or are we just emotional cripples at best, doomed to hold on to the past? I have had involvement with the temple since approximately 89. Why do you try to take back what in the past you have denied having any involvement with? Was it a disinformation campaign? How can you pass judgment on every individual in the temple? And how can you have blatant disregard for those whom you have never met personally? I have seen you. I haven't met you, but I have seen you up close. It is in my memory. Chicago, 90, 91, the rave goes on. Is the rave an attempt to destroy an organization of individuals, each developing themselves in their own way, who are part of a structure which you should be proud of having had a part in initiating? Does it give you pleasure to attempt to destroy that which you had a part in creating? Or is the process supposed to be our next watering hole? I don't want a part of your process, your alternative to TOPY. How lame indeed. Regardless of what happens, you can never take away any involvement each separate individual has had with the present entity. The project ended in 91. How can you say that? Genesis. I must therefore demand that you reply immediately by mail to me with a set of proposals that are realistic and reflect the true legal position, which is primarily very simple. TOPY and ADA. If this true legal position is primarily very simple, then why don't you state it right out instead of using legalese? Why don't you go right out and tell everyone on this list what your true intents are? Not just directed to Dan, Max, which wasn't just to the above, but to the whole damn list, and not second-handedly through interviews in magazines which say the temple project ended in 91. I guess my main question is why? Because it's your birthright? Because you decide to come to the States en masse? What is the problem? Damn it, man. I bet you're in it for the fucking money. Well, there's no money here. You really have a lot of balls. Something must be bothering, hence your unwarranted, blatant past and present intrusion. If the time for clear, concise communication is now, then please respond. The lines of communication are open, and since you have strayed onto the list, you may as well respond. If there is anything real about you left besides dogma and control, which supposedly you're against, then perhaps you will. If not, you will continue to perpetuate falsehoods. Date, April 13th, 1995. From Christopher Robin to Genesis P-Orridge. Subject RETOPY forward. I'm sure you're going to get this if you haven't already. As I said, it was only a matter of time before they went public. This post is from the NA station. Forwarded message. TOPY is alive and well in NA. As others have pointed out, Mr. Orridge publicly announced his separation from TOPY approximately 5 years ago and should no longer be considered a spokesperson for our magical organization, nor is PTV to be considered a TOPY propaganda tool. Psychic Warriors of Gaia and Instagon, as well as Allura, previously known as Mistress Mix and PTV, are magical musical allies. Our symbol, the Psychic Cross, is in fact an ancient alchemical symbol and has been used in TOPY-NA since 1987. In brief, TOPY is a magical network which supports individual magic and researches practical applications for its use in a post-modern world, with particular focus in harvesting sexual energy a la A.O. Spare. Thus concludes my reading of the Psychic Bible for today. Section 126, Part C of Addendum to the second edition of the Psychic Bible. Tomorrow I will complete the Psychic Bible with Section 127, Part D of Addendum to the second edition of the Psychic Bible. I'll see you then.